And I want to thank everyone in attendance here in the studio and for the Zoom meeting. We really appreciate it. Just to give a little context on the audience in attendance, what we have here in the studio and via Zoom is the Creative Careers interns and trainees. Now they've both been in the program since May, and the interns have are a little more newer to the field. They have some experience with digital media. They're in the program through September, and then they'll soon be entering the internship phase of the program, where they will work closely with different departments within AFS. And our trainees come with a bit more experience. Perhaps they've probably worked on films or other small projects before coming to Creative Careers. They'll be closing out the program in August, and the hope is to help them with job placements within the industry once they have wrapped with AFS. So welcome, and thank you for making yourself available. We really appreciate having you. So we're just going to have kind of a start off with some general panel questions. Speaking to everybody, to be so formal, kind of loosen up a little bit, get the energy going. Every great story has an shape or effect in your desire to pursue a career in the industry.
Well, I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, which is a pretty it has a big name, but it's a pretty small town, ultimately, the capital there. But there wasn't a whole lot to get into trouble, and nobody was really roaming the streets. So we really had to use our imaginations and try to put together our own fun. For me, that started as early as I can really remember. My mother showed me not too long ago when I was 5 years old. I was Michael Jackson in our school talent show, and had the sequin glove and all. So
that's amazing.
I'd always been on the performing side of the entertainment industry, and we had theater clubs, and I was always a part of those. I was the Harrisburg Symphony had a live theater program, and the symphony would play, and then we would act on stage and interpret whatever we thought was interpretable. I mean, little kids running around acting a fool.
Yeah.
So I have always just kind of been on stage and a part of that. And then in through high school and taking the leads in all of those plays, and then realizing that the high school community there wasn't really taking it seriously. So I befriended our principal, and I got keys to our high school, and I was writing and directing the high school performances from that point on.
And then from there on,
going to Penn State and moving to New York. And
what was your reaction with your family and telling them that was your destiny?
I think that it was never necessarily a conversation. I think they always knew.
Really? That's great. Yeah. They just knew. It was in your DNA.
My mother would occasionally take me to Philadelphia, which was our closest big city, to Jack Lemmon casting. And myself and Shia LaBeouf were up for Holes.
You're kidding?
No,
really?
Yeah. In 1997, that was almost my break.
Wow. It would have been a completely different movie if it was you in it. Wow. I would have loved to have seen that.
So yeah, they were always helpful and always supportive. And I mean, when I wasn't doing theater, I was playing baseball or basketball or figure skating or gymnastics or diving or swimming or soccer.
And could sports have been maybe that other path if you hadn't gone into this industry, or was there any other profession that was considered an option?
I thought I was going to be a professional rollerblader for a long time.
Well, sweet rollerblades, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We all had them, the windsuits. I had that too. That's awesome. Jen, tell us about your origin story.
Well, I grew up in a little town, a Ford town in Michigan. There wasn't a bus, there wasn't taxis. We felt like we were in the middle of nowhere, even though we were 10 miles from Ann Arbor. And I started in performance too. I was doing a lot of acting and dance in my childhood, but I went to Michigan State, majored in journalism, and that's that I thought was going to be the trajectory. I worked for CBS News as a reporter when I graduated college, and then realized quickly I didn't like the politics of it. So I moved to LA and started sort of swimming, trying to figure things out. Befriended a producer who ended up mentoring me into producing and sort of taught me everything he knew. And he ended up show running the show Chris Angel Mind Freak for A&E and brought me in as not even a PA, it was a runner. And worked my way up through that series over 100 episodes and ended up being the showrunner myself.
So from runner to showrunner on
I'm always
show.
running.
Wow, always running. Wow, that's an amazing path. Now, could there have been any other path that you considered that if you weren't going to be in this industry at all?
Well, I did. It was news, and that one, hit the cutting room floor. So
What didn't you like about the news or journalism in general?
When I got into the inside of it, it felt like you were just watching life pass by, and I was really into telling stories. I always felt like they would find me, and I had the edge on a lot of really deep stories that could be breaking news sort of stuff, and then realized the politics of it, that news is not publicly funded and it's owned by somebody. And I started seeing a lot of things get denied for no reason. We can't talk about that.
Oh, I see. So it was kind of stifling a little bit, or just, there's,
Yeah.
the news outlets have sponsors, maybe, or just some kind of corporate ties, right?
Yeah. So I thought, if I'm going to make up stories, why don't I be more fun with it in Hollywood?
No, that's absolutely right. That's a bold choice. Journalism is definitely something I couldn't do it. Journalism can be a little scary too. So good on you. Amy, tell us about your origin story and how it started.
So I grew up in a really small town in Texas, in South Texas, area code 361 for anybody who's from that area. There's another filmmaker in town, Sharon Arteaga, who's from there. And she is the only other filmmaker I know from that area code. There was no, we didn't really have a film department in our high school. It's a really small town. So I did not initially leap into this industry. I went to undergraduate at Texas A&M and I studied psychology. And my thought process was, well, I'm always going to have to work with people, so I might as well try to understand what that is. And I thought I would go on to a clinical graduate degree, a PhD in clinical psychology, and instead sort of pivoted and applied for a master's program in journalism at Northwestern. And I learned to write. And by learning to write, it made me suddenly really, really valuable to a lot of production companies in Chicago. Coming out of that program, a lot of the production companies will recruit straight out, because if you can write a script, they can teach you everything else you need to know. I think that for the production companies, that felt like the skill that they were the most hungry for. And so I got pulled into a production company in Chicago that I was with for almost 7 years. And that's really where I learned. We were all in our early 20s, and they would be like, here's your episode. It's been sold to this network. Here's your total sum budget. Go. You have one AP. You're the producer. Here's your editor.
There you go. Yeah.
It was a trial by fire, and we learned a lot. We had a lot of fun. It was an enormous amount of work, and it was either New York or LA after that. So I chose the warmer of the two. And that was where I really, really dove headfirst into feature-length documentaries. And when I came back to Texas, Austin's given me a really interesting kind of mix of different projects, which I've really, really enjoyed. I've been able to flex different muscles. In LA, you sort of end up on a track. And in Austin, you are more free to sort of try different things and work with different people and flex different and try different skills. And I really, really appreciated that about Austin.
No, that's great. And actually later on, I wanted to ask all of you about Los Angeles and New York, and we can talk a little bit about kind of those work environments too. Going back to South Texas, I'm from West Texas. Tell me about growing up in South Texas, how that influenced your storytelling, even, inspiring you to create coming from that part of the state, which if you, anybody who's not from Texas or even South Texas, could you describe kind of the environment of there?
South Texas is predominantly Mexican American. It is the types of towns that I grew up in are predominantly Spanish speaking. Even if you're not Mexican American, you probably have some Spanish because you need it. There's a cowboy culture for sure. If you meet my dad and my brother, they will be genuinely wearing a cowboy hat because they, as a side entrepreneurial, our family we're a cattle ranching family. So they ride horses, they herd cattle, and then they have their normal jobs too. So I'm sort of the quintessential Texas. I remember once I went to summer camp and my dorm mate was from New York City, and she and I had so many great conversations, and she was like, do you ride a horse to school? And I was like, no, but I do drive, the big truck was a thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely a unique part of the world. I think for a long time, when I was really young and I was just fresh out to Chicago, I sort of felt like it was like, I don't know, like it was behind in some way, but actually being in such a unique part of the world gives you such unique stories to tell and stories that are untold. So it's really, actually, in retrospect, it's all the things that are unique about you and where you come from are what are going to help you tell really interesting and unique stories that have not been told before.
Absolutely. It seems like coming from a small town, this is kind of like we all kind of had, or that area, it puts you in the position to expand your imagination and just kind of be a little more out thinking in terms of creativity. I totally get it. A little bit about me. I am from West Texas, a town called San Angelo, which is 200 miles west of Austin. Growing up, I'm just a product of the 80s, a kid of the 80s. My favorite, growing up, it was E.T. and the Goonies, Back to the Future, all the Ghostbusters, the iconic films that came out in the 80s. So that just made my imagination run wild. I almost found myself as a child just as fascinated of whenever I'd see footage of behind the scenes of any film. To me, them making it was just as interesting as the movie itself. I love seeing the lights, the cameras, what are these things they put in, and it's moving, and just the whole production aspect was just fascinating to me. Now, growing up in West Texas, obviously, it might as well have been Mars, further from Los Angeles or New York or, any kind of city that had legitimate film production. At the time I grew up, into the 90s, it was still very, very heavy on film school. That was something that wasn't really in the stars for me growing up. Again, just with the culture that I grew up in, West Texas, kind of a very country fried kind of part of the state. If anybody's seen No Country for Old Men, that is exactly what my hometown is like. So not a lot of flash and filmmaking, but through I got to tell you, I was, thought I was really destined for just kind of like a normal life, working in an office, doing, I didn't go to college. My education really didn't exceed past high school. However, once I moved to Austin in 2008, I started to see a lot more film production going on. I think Revolution was going on kind of around that time. So it was just amazing to me of all the film production that was going on in Austin, and I just had to be a part of it. So through a family member who's an extended family member, I reached out to him and asked him, how do I get into the industry? And he actually helped me get my first job as a PA on a commercial back in 2013. Didn't know anything about film sets, never been on one before, but I was pretty strong and I can drive a box truck. I was more of definitely as a PA, a utility on set. And I learned a lot and I had a great time. So basically, at my full-time job, I had sick time that I had accumulated from working there for so many years. So I would just continue to apply as a production assistant. And whenever I'd get work, I would call in sick, use up my sick days at that old office job. And when I say office job, I'm talking office space, business casual, potlucks, and, the whole cubicle culture that, we've come to know. And eventually I ran out of sick time and really had to figure out if I wanted to stay in that world that was safe, that I kind of knew I could probably make a living and do okay with, considering, I hadn't gone to college, or I could take that risk and go full time into the film industry. And I just got married, by the way. So that's a hell of a thing to do, to a spouse, to say, I think I'm going to go freelance as a production assistant. But with my wife's support, she had said, I get to do what I want for a living. You should be able to as well. So I went for it, and I hit some pretty healthy traction as a PA starting off, and then eventually through a series of jobs led me to working for Onion Creek Productions, where now I'm the head of production there. So, clearly everyone has different paths that we've all taken, and they've all led us to the same room. And that's a really important lesson to know. It's regardless of what you're doing. Again, it's like we look at the range of skill sets that everyone has here. Again, regardless of our path, we're in the same room, and we're all talking about it right now. I wanted to get real quick into kind of, for people who are not too familiar or want to get kind of a 360 idea of job description and within your title, Jaytyler, as a first assistant director, can you describe basically, your job title? What are some of the most common duties as a first AD on any set? And you can touch from commercial work, feature film, television. And can you elaborate on the differences and similarities?
Sure. I think that the most common thread of a first AD is the grease. So if a grip needs to speak to an electric, who needs to speak to the art person, who the transportation department can't park a truck there because the tree needs to be cut, who does anybody talk to? So it's just like you're either throwing darts in the dark, or you know that you can go to one person, and then that one person facilitates all of the other departments into the order that the ship needs to be run. It's most sets, when you get to that level, are very militant. So you don't necessarily ask a different department's boss to do something. It has to go all the way up and down the ladder. So you kind of find your general, so to speak, and then that person can delegate responsibilities throughout the rest of the company accordingly.
Absolutely. So, if you've never been on a film set or haven't spent a lot of time on film sets, they are a traveling circus. It ranges from just a few people to 90, 100, even more people. So who tells everyone what to do? When everyone shows up on set and everyone's got their own specific orders, the director obviously is there to focus on the vision of the creative, but who is telling, what is being set up right now? What scene are we working on now? And what scene are we going to work on after that? So that's where Jaytyler comes in, steering the ship and really, really commanding every single position on where they need to be. And also talk a little bit about schedule building, safety on set, kind of communication to, the whole set, giving maybe a debriefing afterwards. Exactly what is your process on a film set?
Sure. And again, there's introverts and extroverts, and there's not a lot of, true directors that really enjoy the spotlight. A lot of those people are very introverted, and they want to get a vision across, but they want to get a vision across very quietly and very specifically. So then they'll take my ear and they'll say, so this is what I really want to do. Can you try to make that happen? So then I have to turn on my extrovert and say, okay, folks, so this is what's going on, and this is where we're going to be. And if we want to start shooting at 7:30 a.m., I have to know that myself and my team has already thought ahead of knowing that we need 4 female actresses ready for our very first scene. So then we have to know and have to get with the other departments to realize that each one of our actresses takes 44 minutes to get ready. So we only have 3 hair and makeup people that day. So we need to negotiate whose call time is when, and who goes through wardrobe first and who goes through hair and makeup first. And then that becomes a perfect ballet to know that we're ready at 7:29. And that, and I'm sure that they will speak a little bit more to that, that is a very producer specific thing. So I only get in trouble from one or two people on a film set, and that is from the producers who were just like, yeah, but you said that you were going to be ready at 7:30 and it's 7:35. This thing's going off the rails already. So schedule building and knowing how long each department takes is really the education that I get paid for. It's not that anybody can delegate a game plan. It's that I have, and I know you said 1,000 hours, I have 1,000 days.
Sorry.
So think 15 hours a day, and then times that by 1,000. So, and that is me watching the grip department put up a dolly track. And I know how long it takes to set up a dolly track. So I know that that my actor or actress who has to have a hair change, it's best for me to set that up because it's going to take 25 minutes to do this dolly track. So my whole day is kind of defining whether that wall needs to be painted a certain color. I know how long that takes. I literally know how long paint takes to dry. Or setting up a dolly track, or putting a condor in the air so that you can hang lights from it. My experience is sitting back and watching and counting the clock to know how long those things are going to take to build the schedule throughout the day, to then be able to deliver that to the producer types, and then us be able to shake hands and say, are you sure? And then they say, yeah. And I go, I sure hope so. Let's go for this.
Absolutely. Or would you say there are any differences as an AD working in television, commercials, or feature films?
So commercials are really fast and furious. Traditionally, if you have a 2 or 3 day commercial, you are not even aware as an AD what that commercial might be about until 2 or 3 days before that. And then it's just like, here, make this pretty picture very quickly and get out of here and go on to the next one. With feature films, pardon me, you'll get a script that might change a little bit, but the idea is there, the actors are there, and you might be able to work on that for a month or sometimes 2 months, where you plan out each one of those hair changes because they're going to set down a dolly track. And so 2 months in advance on a Tuesday at 3:30, I know what we're doing. So that's a very specific, very intellectually intense vetting process of who you need to speak to and who everybody is shaking hands and agreeing that this is how long this is going to take. Where television is a very intense world. And the best description that I have on that is you are literally laying down the train tracks as the train is coming behind you. And we don't know what we're shooting tomorrow because it hasn't been written yet. So everybody be here on time and know how long it takes to accomplish some of these small tasks, because we don't really know what we're shooting tomorrow.
Yeah, that's insane. And,
Yeah.
and communicating that to dozens and dozens of people, multiple departments,
Sometimes hundreds.
yeah, sometimes hundreds, multiple locations. That is truly an incredible feat. And who do you typically, we know the producer, but also the director, you assisting the director. What is it that you tee it for the director in your job?
So it's really interesting. I don't even know if assistant director is the right word. I've always thought that assistant director, it should be a different title, because I'm not really assisting the director. I am facilitating other things that the director doesn't get to facilitate. So for example, if James and I are just having this conversation, I know my lines and he knows his lines. And the director might say, can you cheer it up a little bit? Can you tone it down a little bit? Can you have a little bit more eye contact, this and that? But as an assistant director, that is the only part of the production that I don't touch. So I don't have a hand in the way that this scene's communication is going. But what I do have a hand in is our other ladies sitting up here, the camera's sitting over there, the way that these lights are set up, where you guys are sitting, when that door opens, if somebody falls over, if we have a chair that needs to be knocked over, if there's...
Have extras?
Yeah. So everybody else is what the assistant director touches. So it's sometimes funny when you see a director might come in and say, okay, I love this scene, but it's a little dark in here. What I'd really like to do is have a window over there, and then I want to kick some light into the window. And then they'll say, okay, so let's make that happen. And then the director leaves. And then we pull this thing back and go, there's not a window there. We can't fake a window being there. How? I mean, we could. You never really want to say no. Let me get with the art department and see how long it would take to build a window and then put a light through it and try to make the director happy. So then we'll get on a thread and say, okay, well, we can certainly make that happen. It's going to be 2.5 hours. So then my job is to go to the director and say, hey, absolutely, I want to give you what you want. And we can totally make a window and we can push that light through the window, but then we're not going to get the rest of the scenes that you want for the day. So what do you need? Is it okay that it's that dark in there? Do you want to make the movie, or do you need a window?
I need a window. I need a window. Give me a window.
So it's really that negotiating.
The budget's
process.
not approved for that window.
Right.
Budget's not approved for that window.
But that's a perfect example. So then I would go to one of the producers and I would say, hey, director really wants this window. I know
want
we
that
didn't.
window.
Yeah, I know we didn't talk about it, but they want the window. Is it in our budget? If we get the window, we're going to shoot for 1.5 hours longer than we were going to shoot for today. And sometimes that's just a real question that needs to happen. And sometimes the answer is okay, but sometimes the answer is absolutely not. So,
So a lot of multitasking.
So a lot of multitasking and a lot of grease. And it really is just a point of contact.
Absolutely. Unsung hero on set. Definitely. Jaytyler. Amazing. By the way, Jaytyler and I worked together on our most recent feature film, Home Free, which is currently in post. Just hearing Jaytyler's voice, I got to tell you, it brings back our last film that we did, good memories. And, there is a certain personality type that people do tend to, agree on, the personality of a first AD, and let's be honest, sometimes it's very, very loud. It's an outdoor voice, but Jaytyler, it's like butter coming from you, man. And tell me about that, because there is a difference between kind of forceful management, having to wrangle all these kittens, but also with the demeanor that you have. It's calm, it's focused. Tell me a little bit about that and those differences.
Well, it certainly took a while to try to hone in, and I'm still kind of, always working on that, and that really is a part of the job. And I've worked with some first ADs that are the boss, and you don't really like that person very much. When you really have somebody barking orders at you, you tend to start to phase them out or start to try to think about how you would do things differently to not get yelled at. So either your communication is shut down or you're going as a rogue agent. So what you kind of want to mitigate from the start is that. So I've worked with a lot of first ADs, and what I've kind of taken is mellow is good. Being reactive is not good.
Yeah.
So I want to know what's going to happen if I spill a water here. It's not going to be the end of the world if a water spills. So just knowing that you are aware of the trip falls before they happen is what really allows you to kind of stay in a mellower mood. Now, I have lost my cool on set for sure, but then you kind of step back and you realize again, I'm the grease. I'm not the boss. I'm the grease. So it took me a long time to realize when I got to this level that, now I'm here, but I'm also still not necessarily in charge. So kind of letting go of that creates a little bit of a zen. Yeah. So then people can come to you and you can go to other people. And a way that I've also figured out works very well is you don't tell people what to do. You ask them what they would like to do. And then you allow those workers to make the decision. And then that way they are choosing to accomplish something that you were going to ask them to do. But you kind of politely say, do you want to maybe put that window up over there kind of thing? Rather than, hey, you told me that you were going to do that, get it done.
That's amazing. I'm going to have to use that on my next project for sure. Grease lightning. The grease of the
There we
grease lightning
go.
right here, Jaytyler. That's great. Thank you so much. Now, Jen, you producing going into the post world with many of your projects from soup to nuts. Tell me a little bit about your roles from producer and going into mainly supervising the post process in a project.
Right. Well, first off, I think that post, if you haven't done it, is plays such an important role in your thoughts when you're in the field. Everybody always just thinks, oh, I want to be on set, I want to make movies, I want to make TV shows, but it really just brings you up to another level when you know what happens at the end. And a lot of people will say that's where the real creative starts to happen, because we start to get all the footage back and see all the mistakes and all the things that went right and have to re-put together the intention of the piece. And it can be a really fun process, or it can be really grueling. I was a co-executive producer on a TV series, which meant that there was another showrunner, and the way that we kind of split it up is he was overseeing the field teams and I was overseeing the post department. And it was a show for Travel Channel. And our talent wasn't necessarily wanting to do what the creative was for the series. It was switched on them. It was supposed to be sort of a funny thing, and they were very funny people, and then they wanted it more serious. So he had to take like a right hand turn as we're shooting this series and say, you need to be more serious, you need to be more scared. And they're like, what? This is not what we were sold. So they started battling the camera and the direction. And so then we were getting the stuff that was like in nowhereville back in post, and we were having to literally fix it in post. And when you hear that phrase, you don't want to be in that seat.
No,
you
absolutely not.
really don't. So it's the footage gets ingested, and the post producer, depending on what role you are, I was very hands-on. So I was watching down as much of the footage as I could. And a lot of producers kind of break off in their thoughts at that point. Of a lot of people like to do paper cuts. So they'll get all the footage transcribed and then try to write to that. I'm more of, I learned to edit at a young age. So I'm more of a person that likes to just put together what's called a string out, where you just start to pull down pieces of creative stuff that works and kind of just move it around into little sections of stories. So, organizationally, I'll always have, oh, okay, they're talking about this over here, or they're talking about this over here. And I'll start trying to figure out where to put my puzzle pieces together. So if you like chess or if you like checkers, it's a lot like that. Like you're like, oh, what's my next move here? How's this all going to come together?
That's amazing. Tell me about managing teams in the post world, and then also dealing with deadlines and how big deadlines impacts you on your tasks involved in post.
Yeah, so usually post starts pretty quickly when shooting starts, because you need your team in place to start ingesting the footage immediately, start organizing, and start taking a look to see if there's anything that needs to be corrected quickly, because the train is already speeding down the track. You don't want to get to a place where you realize, oh no, like at the end. So we'll usually have we'll sort of, depending on what it is, if it's 10 episode series, I might have 2 editors on and an assistant editor, and I'll start adding people as we go, as it starts to pile up. And there's a post supervisor that will be overseeing all the sort of higher onboarding of the employees and the organizational workflow, and how things are going to happen in the Avid machines, or whatever editing machines chosen. In TV series, it's usually Avids. And each editor will get assigned what they're going to do, and they start working on it. And so what's fun, on TV series, and this is where I'm talking from right now with my thoughts, at any point I might be bouncing around to 6 different edit bays. And so in my mind, I'm like, okay, wait, this is in the middle of the story. Okay, play the scene. And then I'm going to another edit bay because he wasn't ready for me, but it's actually the beginning of the scene. Okay, let's see how that's going to piece together, and, giving him notes and saying, okay, that worked, this didn't. Did you see that one piece of footage? And, we keep sort of moving on that path until finally our lead editor will take all the pieces, put them together, do a nice smooth over, and then say, okay, here's what's missing or working or not. So the lead editor plays a very intricate role in post.
In this process, are you physically present the majority of the time, or has this in this COVID world, post-COVID world, turned into a virtual kind of management? And how do you do those things?
Yeah. So when the pandemic happened, we were just we were just finished shooting a series that me and Amy were both on, and we were just naturally moving into post. We were going to be in a post house in Los Angeles, and our director was going to fly there for reviews and all of that. And so when pandemic happened, everybody wanted to go home. I mean, we thought the world was ending, right? We had no idea what this was.
Absolutely.
And a lot of networks at the time were saying, they started pulling the plug on a lot of shows. And so my first job at that point was to say, no, we're too far along. Like, we have a plan. We're ready to do this. We can take this show to the end. Here's 3 different versions of the budget, and here's the plan for editorial. And we were on the horn with systems that you could live watch editing. And at the time, there's just a few of them. They're very expensive. And I mean, we really interviewed and dug into it a lot and found something that would work for live watching of editorial. So all the editors were able to go to New York, to LA, to wherever they were from. And we set up these systems in their house. We even shipped some Avids to some of them, or some had some
Really?
Avids at home and we rented them from them. But yeah, and now, like, we've advanced so much in the past 2 years. You can really just easily virtually edit, because there's so many more systems that came about where you can all be in a Zoom room and, watching stuff live. And I've just finished a film right now where we decided just to rinse and repeat after the TV series. So we used one editor in LA, one in New York. Our composer is in New York. Our director's in San Francisco. I'm here in Austin, and it all worked.
And you could be, physically present for this, but now that you've adapted to this post-COVID post world or process of working, do you like the way you're doing it virtually and getting editors in LA, and I've got one in Denver doing this, and then all over? Do you like that? Do you want to stick to that?
There's pluses and minuses. I like having the freedom to work from my house and be on my own time, but there is something to be said for being in the Bay with everybody shoulder to shoulder and just like sort of being like having that sort of energy and making decisions together. Because sometimes stories, they just get hung up in various places, and you really have to sit there and, okay, let's get another cup of coffee and let's order in. And, just that whole sort of process is part of the creative fun, I think.
That,
And so we are missing that.
That's amazing. I've actually never been part of the post process. And when you said an energy, tell me about that. I mean, it's like we're all hit and like, oh, what about this? Is it spitballing, or you see something and you're like, guys, what about this? And I mean, does that kind of spark that kind of?
I mean, we've wordsmithed like one word for an hour sometimes. And
kidding.
then all of a sudden somebody just says something and they're like, yes, and it fixes the whole thing. Or we just find one moment in the footage, or, just have some sort of thought because like the scene is not working. Or like, what if we just reverse this?
That sounds really exciting. Wow, that's cool. I'm gonna have to be part of the post process a little bit more. Amy, about your role as a producer, tell me about when is it typical that you come in as a producer on a particular project? What exactly do you look for in a particular project? And are there any red flags to a particular project that you weigh in on before accepting a project?
These are all 3 huge questions.
We'll dice it up. Sorry about that. So the first one is about producing,
Okay.
and where typically you're coming in that phase of the project, and what are your roles that you apply?
So I should be totally transparent and explain that I work in pretty much 3 ways. So I work in nonfiction content. I work in documentary. I work in documentary film. I work in documentary television, and docu-style branded content. And within that, to further complicate things, I work in 3 ways. I work as somebody who is completely at the helm of a project, a story that I am passionate about, and I want to lift it completely off the ground myself, in which I have 2 producing partners. One is here in Texas, one is in Los Angeles. And we find stories that we're passionate about, and we, develop them, and we do enough creative work with them that we, can start taking meetings with networks and see if we can pitch a series or pitch a film and get essentially get it purchased and funded. I also work from the perspective of, I call it producer for hire. Somebody has already done what I just described, and now they've got 10 episodes and they need a producer to take 1, 2, 3 of those. And it's like, here's the concept, here's a little research, go. So I call that producer for hire. And then the third is, well, I guess that's the 3. It's the me totally taking something from scratch and trying to lift it. It's me and my producing partners doing that and trying to pitch it. And then the producer for hire stuff. The producer for hire stuff is most people, I think, in my position, we straddle multiple projects. So I'm usually juggling 2, if not 3 at a time. The producer for hire stuff is usually obviously on a schedule. If I sell something, if we pitch something and it gets picked up, it's obviously on a schedule. The stuff that's development, that's totally independent stuff, that can take years. And I just have to be patient with it and love and be married to that story and be passionate about it to keep it going. So to further complicate the answer is there's multiple ways that I work. And to be honest, I've done this since I was in my early 20s, and I'm 2 decades past that. And my mother couldn't tell you what I did, because every project just sort of requires a different thing, even though the process is very much the same for every project. You have to research, you have to develop, you have to, plan your shoots, get into, work your budget. The process is the same, but every project is just so unique. And the storytelling itself can really affect the approach. So I don't mean to be too non-transparent or too nebulous in my answer, but it really is so project specific.
Nebulous is a perfect word. So if you could highlight to the audience, what type of producers are there? I mean, you just kind of mentioned that, but there's more than one type of producer. Is that correct?
There's tons of types. I mean, the name producer is I think one of the most misunderstood labels in the industry, because there's so many different types. I came into the business, my first job in the business was I was an associate producer, and then became a producer, and then there's senior producer, and then there's post producer, and then there's executive producer, and there's co-executive producer, and then there's and even that, all of those things can mean different things depending on where that project, what it is. Is it a feature? Is it a feature documentary? Is it a series? Where is it going? Is it going on a streamer? Is it going on a on a network? So all of these factors play into it. But that's the exciting part, right? We're not in this. A long time ago, I worked on a project for Turner Classic Movies. It was a documentary with a couple directors out of San Francisco, and it was leading up to the Oscars. And it ended up sort of being sort of a masterclass a little bit, because we got to interview all of these Oscar-winning individuals in all of these different award-winning arenas, the different categories. And I remember George Clooney specifically saying, he got into this to have fun. And I was like, yeah, if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong in this business. Like, we should be having fun. Find the people who you have fun working with. Find the projects that you have fun doing. Not to say it's not going to be hard, because it's going to be hard, no doubt. but there is, I find so much joy in it, and I suspect you're here too for the same reason. So.
Absolutely. I feel like certain people have an artistic inclination, and they're in this industry because they do have the natural ability to be creators and artists. I can tell you, I'm in this industry as a fanboy. I am a total fanboy. And if I ever work with a celebrity, it's like, oh my God, dude, like my favorite movie is this. And like, I geek out, and it's like, I get to hang out with them all day, and they're just normal people, and we're all just working, and we're professional. But again, it's that kind of skill set where it's like, people have a combination of both the skill set, the natural ability, and then also they're just big fans of it, and they want to have fun, and they love what they do. And it's stressful, and sometimes it'll break your heart. You'll fall in love with it over and over again. But I mean, that's kind of why we're here. It's a very unique profession. Amy, out of all these positions that that are on a set, was producer a natural kind of inclination towards? Did you try any other kind of departments, and not really just starting off as like, a runner, but I'm saying, like, was there any other kind of position that spoke to you, or was producing always that?
So again, the word producer can be tricky. So my first job out of graduate school, I was recruited into this production company, which only did this was pre-reality. I'm totally dating myself here. So they did sort of a true documentary style docuseries for different networks. So for like National Geographic or Discovery or MSNBC. And sorry, I've completely spaced. One more time. Ask me one more time.
No, I was just basically, you being a producer, was that always kind of the finish line? And why? What was it the finish line? It could have been director,
Right.
and I know that you do many other things too, but producer is still kind of your gig.
Okay, so that first company, this is where I was going. They only hired you as producers. So we came in as associate producers. We were promoted to producer, and then from there we went to senior producer. And but we were given a show, and there was only 3 of us on that team: the producer, the AP, and the editor. And so, I did the development, I did the writing, I did the field producer. So the word field producer is a very confusing word, because a field producer can work with a director, or very often in television content, a field producer is not working with the director at all and is the person actually in the field doing the directing. So I claim the title producer because I launched my career, my first 6 years of my career with that title. And when I got to LA, I was hired as a producer onto a documentary project. And that's when I felt I made that leap from a full-time employee at a company to a truly freelance producer, which felt scary. And I was changing to a whole new city and sort of changing even the kinds of the medium that I was producing. I was going from documentary TV to a feature-length documentary. And in Los Angeles, which is a completely overwhelming when you first arrive. And so I remember talking to the line producer in that production, who is a dear friend to this day, and he was like, I remember he would we would look at resumes because we were hiring people for our production, and if there were too many credits that just were sort of erratically all over the place, it was like, done. We don't know what this person really wants to be. So we're not really sure if we hire them in this capacity, if that's really what they want to be doing. It was confusing. And I remember he was like, pick a track. You're on a track and you move that track forward. So, I've always been producer, senior producer, whatever it is. I've always sort of worked in that capacity because I remembered what he said. And I was like, all right, I know I didn't want to deviate from that credit because I didn't want to be in that stack of resumes where the person who was looking at my resume was saying, well, I can't really tell what she wants to do. And I was also at my 7th or 8th year of producing at this point. I wasn't like in year 1 or year 2 where you want to be trying all the things, and it's understandable that you would be. At this point, I was too far to be sort of trying everything. So at this point, I do claim producer as my primary title, but if you go on my website, I've got the word director on there too, because I acknowledge that I do more than just the producer part of it. I'm very often the one who does the interviews. I'm very often the person the director sends when he can't or she can't be on set. So claim your title. Oh, and I have to say this, and I say this all the time, and maybe nobody understands it, but I'll do my best to explain it. But we are, in a lot of ways, if you're a freelancer, you are your own self-created person, right? You do a project tomorrow where you direct a music video, you're a director. Welcome. Here's your title, right? So claim it, be proud of it, wear it, and keep at it, right? It's not like we go through this sort of process like within a company or a corporate setting where you sort of get promoted into certain titles. You are what you create and the position that you choose and want to be on that particular project of yours. So that's kind of wonderful. So
Wonderful. And that's actually a great segue to freelance work. So a lot of people in this program, may very well start into the freelance world after this. Jaytyler, tell me a little bit about what it means to be a freelancer in terms of freelancing in anything you do, from commercial work, sometimes features and music videos. What would you say are kind of the high level pros and cons, or what do you like about freelancing, and is freelancing best for a person that's just getting into the industry?
Well, the way that my path has become is I have never not known freelancing. So it's nerve-wracking, to be honest with you. It can be very rewarding, and I can say that I'm already booked on a job if I don't want to work it. So if
Yeah,
somebody calls
done
and they
that.
say, hey, we would like you to work this overnight on Thursday and Friday of next week, you can say, oh, I really wanted to, but I'm already booked. Sorry,
That sounds familiar,
So-
Jaytyler.
Yeah, I was just thinking that too. I'm like, I think I've heard that.
so busy is if I had time. So so there's these little white lies that freelancing can help you get through, and you can have a happy life. But at the same time, I said no to there was a movie that was here in town 6 weeks ago, and I went back and forth with the producer, and we were trying to get a little bit more money for it to make sense, and ultimately it didn't necessarily make sense. And I had a couple jobs on the horizon, and I was just like, unfortunately, I just don't think it's going to pan out this time. And as a freelancer, you never know who that producer is going to be on the next one, so you always be as cordial as you possibly can. You never want to burn any bridges. And then I didn't get a phone call for 6 weeks. So it can be very hectic and stressful.
Are you saying that the potential projects that on the horizon never
Right.
happened?
Sometimes they just go away. So it's really difficult to put all your eggs in one basket, for sure. So you kind of have to keep good social connections and keep your ear to the ground and keep talking. And I know Amy was saying, sometimes you have a job or a story or something that's special to you. Well, sometimes it takes years for that to get off the ground, and it's whoever you talk to, and oh, you're interested in it? Great. All we need is 5 more people that are interested in it. And sometimes it takes a couple of years before you find those 5 people to finally get one of your own projects off the ground, which then would also be freelancing. So, so that's kind of the highs and the lows of it, I think. And it's just, it becomes difficult to take a vacation if you're trying to set yourself up in this business. If you really want to get work, schedule a vacation.
Absolutely.
That's kind of the golden rule, is as soon as you have something to do, work will come up that you can't refuse. And the whole time that you're waiting for the phone to ring, you're not on vacation. So
No, absolutely. It you just never know. There's no floor, but there's no ceiling either. Kind of like, I guess, Uber, where you can work as much as you want if it's there, or you can take the time to take a break and work in batches. Jen, tell me about the freelance life, and what kind of life do you live being a freelancer?
Well, just to pick up a little bit on what Amy was saying about the different titles, I have many versions of my resume because I've been doing this for over 2 decades myself. And that's the fun thing. You can decide who you're going to be this month. I'm very sick of being a creative. I'm going to deal with numbers and hire people. Great. I have that version of a resume that shows all the line producing, production management stuff. Or no, I feel like going in the field. Okay, great. I've got my showrunner, field producer, director stuff. There's that resume. So a freelancer is great because you can define who you're going to be. You can make your own decisions. It's a lot of networking. You really have to build your community. It's not just the people above you, but the people below you as well. I mean, I get recommended to jobs all the time from people that I've hired on things before too. So it's this big family that, sort of globally exists, and we all are connected to each other in some sort of way. I mean, after 20 years of this, I can send a message out to producers and say, I need to hire a director of photography in India. I just did this last week. And I had 3 referrals in 10 minutes.
Wow, that's amazing.
So, but yes, there's this scary part. And it's like, if I don't keep working, will there be a dry spell and will I not be able to pay my bills? You know, the golden rule is to keep at least 6 months of your bills in the bank, just in case. So you kind of have to really think ahead on that sort of thing. And a lot of people will do side gigs to just keep sort of money flowing when there are the dry spells. You know, I know a DIT that has a side gig of dried meat, beef jerky.
Oh yeah.
That's his side thing.
Yeah.
And you know, some
I
other
love that
people
jerky.
will do, like I do consulting. And so if there's a dry spell, I might kick it up a notch and say, you know, I'm available to help you with your script. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that freelancing, you know, offers some kind of, well, obviously it offers that liberating aspect of it where you can do other things. What advice would you give to someone who is joining the freelance world that is just trying to get traction and start off with their first job?
Yeah. Mentor, mentor, mentor. And did I say mentor? And then secondly, decide who you want to be in this world. Because it was a great point that was made too about that we do this for fun. It sounds fun to us. And I can't tell you how many times I've taken a job out of desperation and it was not fun. You know, the team was overstressed. You know, the work environment was not great. And it's taken me a lot of years, too many years, to realize the golden rule of the power that you can have to say no. And if it's almost like you tell the universe, I'm not going to do that, and something better comes because you're telling the rules, you know? And once I finally learned that and started saying no to things that are crappy, good things actually start coming. So if you can get mentors and find out who the good teams are, who the good companies are, you know, Onion Creek is a great company to work with because they're very positive people. They're communicative and they're like a community. I work with Onion Creek all the time. But you know, there's some other companies, if they come a calling, oh, I'm booked.
What is typically, Amy, what would you say is the type of media that freelancing is more common and less common with? Or you know, if you can answer that, or if anybody else wants to generalize and answer that, you know, would it be the commercial life, feature films, small indies? You know, there might be some people in this audience that exclusively want to be on a television show, and what does that mean?
So again, I can really only speak to my lane, which is documentary nonfiction content. So I'm not sure that I can completely answer that well, but you know, if you've ever lived in LA, which I know you have, I mean, it feels like everybody's a freelancer in LA. It's its own little universe of people who are all dipping in and out of projects and networking and getting to know each other in this coexistence in this. It's an interesting thing to work and live in a city where the majority of everybody there works in the same industry as you. And in a way, it's really enjoyable in the sense that no matter what you do, you're meeting people in the industry, and it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? On the flip side, at some point you're like desperate for conversation that has nothing to do with the industry. so it has its pluses and its minuses. I will dip back to what Jen was mentioning about the 6 months in savings. I feel actually really passionate about people. When you go freelance, do your homework, not only in terms of the project, your first job that you're going to take, and who you're going to work with, but make sure that you personally, you financially, we work really hard. We work really hard on our shows. We work really hard on budgets, but like work as hard for yourself because you are now your own business, right? So you have to do the things that are business minded for yourself. which includes your own personal budget, your own personal website, your own personal marketing, your own personal networking. So you have to do all, you have to ask the question, mentor, find the people that you admire, their work and their body of work. Have the gumption to write to them. You'd be surprised. People will write you back. They've been where you are. It's get used to the word no. Get a little bit thick-skinned. Get used to it. That's part of the process that helps you grow. And for every, I don't know, half dozen no's, you'll get a yes, and it will feel like the biggest victory. So learn sort of the business side, what it is to be your own little business, because if you are freelance, you are probably going to be your own little S Corp or LLC, and you'll have to do all the little business things. And I keep saying little because they're not little. They're actually not little at all. They're really important. So do your craft and do it super, super well, but also do your business super, super well.
In addition to that, the thing that was so successful for me was offering help to people without asking, because people are so surprised when you do this. And when I was transitioning from, or actually, no, let me start. When I started as a runner at the Chris Angel Mind Freak show and moved my way up to showrunner, the reason I was able to do it so fast is when they would say, go home, the post coordinator was the one that was supervising me. And I would say, well, what are you doing? How do you leave? Let me help you do that. And so he would let me stay and help him. And I wasn't getting paid any extra because it was like a flat rate. And then when the budget changed, I would say, hey, I know that job. Can I do that job? And I would continue to help people and learn their jobs as I went along. And, I could not collect enough information. And that's why I ended up in post or in budgets and whatever, because I, just started collecting things. So when the opportunity arose, you go, oh, I know that. And, you kind of save someone's ass sometimes. But when I went to go switch to film, I realized that there was a sort of barrier to entry. Oh, well, you don't have any film experience. And I'm like, well, I have producing experience, it's all the same. I mean, some separate words and whatever. And I found a mentor in film, and she was on a telecall. This was before Zoom, and we were listening to her talk. And I sent her an email because she gave us all her email address. And I said, I'm on hiatus. I would love, and I'm not an intern, but I have all this experience in television, but none in film. I would love to help you, if you have any development projects or whatever, free of charge. And in return, I would just learn what you know. And that would be really important to me. And she wrote me back immediately. She goes, holy F. She used the whole word. Nobody ever offers that. And I went and worked for her on my own time, a few hours a week, and I ended up working on 2 of her movies, and she upped my title on both of them. And then I was a co-producer, and we're still amazing friends to this day. That was, 12 years ago or something.
That's amazing. I do want to, amplify what she said. Basically, as a head of production for Onion Creek, I get tons of emails of people looking for work, looking for a job, people that are new to town, new to the industry. And usually the email starts with something like, I'm looking for work. I'd love to grow with your company. I would love, and basically the email or the request kind of is in the shape of, how can you help me? I always tell people a little bit of advice is to change your rap. If you're looking for some work, if you're looking to get your foot in the door, I think it's very important to put yourself in the position where I cannot live without you, where you are able to take anything off my hands that I have to find time for, or it's like, with Onion Creek stuff. I mean, there's so many odds and ends that I have to do that's taken me away from writing proposals or getting on conference call with agencies, to where it's like, if someone could take that off my plate, oh my God, that would be wonderful. I would love, what else what are you doing next week? Because I could use your help with that. Again, it's putting yourself in the position where you are in demand and that person really relies on you. And it may start off with getting lunch or picking up some packages at UPS, but guess what? I can see that you're responsible, you follow directions, you can do things promptly and with a good attitude. And guess what? Those responsibilities will just get bigger and bigger, and to where it's like, hey, you know what? I'm not needed, or, I could bounce for a little bit, you take over for a little while. It just evolves into more and more responsibility. So I love that you made that into a point. And really, what does that person walk away with? They're going to be walking away with that experience and that knowledge of the job. And again, being able to save someone's ass or come in and save the day and be able to take that off of someone's hands who's got way too many pots boiling, that's gold. And again, just think about it whenever the next time you're looking for a job or even just looking to learn from somebody, is changing your wrap into the position where, how can I help you? Jen, how can I help you? Jaytyler, how can I take that off your plate? Or what is it that you don't like to do, or any minutia that I can take off your plate to save you some time and for you to focus on other things? Amy, what can I do for you? So I want to emphasize that. I think that's very important. And I think that's kind of a wrap that a lot of people don't really tend to think about. It's really just trying to figure out how they can get a job. It's really the job will come when you coming up, ready to help out and lend a hand, because we all need a helping hand sometimes. Real quick, I'm going to blaze through this. Thank you so much for your patience, everyone. Some great answers. Let's talk about personal lives, in not too personal, but really let's talk about, in this industry, when we just talked about freelance work, not knowing where your next job comes from, working on a television show where it's 12 to 15 hours a day, 5 days a week, working on documentaries where they can sometimes take years. What kind of life do you live? And how do you manage relationships or raising a family if you're in this industry? Jaytyler, do you want to start on that one?
Yeah, but mine's a little bit brief, I think. I don't have any kids, and I know both of our ladies over here do. So I think that they'll be able to go much more in depth in that world than I will. I know that it can be trying, and it's a lot to juggle. And I know that I moved here with my fiance in 2013, and I was on the TV show called Revolution, and I was working 80 hours a week. So we moved to a new town, and I saw her on Saturdays from 8 p.m. to midnight for 10 months. So it can certainly be trying on relationships, and it can certainly be trying for some of the personal life kind of things. And that's also when you decide whether you're going to do television or movies or commercials. That's also another thing with coming back to freelancing, where you can say yes or no to jobs. And sometimes you really have to take care of yourself. And TV can be really hard because it's 10, 11 months of 80-hour weeks, where if it's a commercial and I feel like I haven't seen my fiance, or we need to go out of town or go to the beach or go to Barton Springs or something like that, I might say no to a job next week just so I can do a little bit of home maintenance in the personal relationship.
Which is important, and obviously that's going to affect you financially, or say no to passing on a project, potentially maybe not getting it the next time it comes around, or that producer's in town again. So yeah, I mean, everything kind of has somewhat of a consequence, right?
Yeah.
Passing on something or even taking something else. Jen, do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on that sort of no life train was on the train for many years, but I was obsessed with it. Like, that was my life. I loved being in the field. I loved being busy. I loved being in post and putting this together. And after a while, when I had my daughter, I was like, I can't be on that train anymore. And so I took on another skill of learning budgets and, being able to be the producer that pops into set and pops off. Like, I don't have to be there, so I think, you kind of just have to move with what you're feeling internally that you want to do, where you're at in your life. But I've also learned some tricks that I wish I knew back in the day. You don't have to stay up so late having drinks with everybody. You could get up at 5:30 in the morning and get a couple hours of quiet work done, and then, go have a life towards the end of the day because you're already ahead. You can rebalance your life where you put working out as part of your daily routine, no matter what. It's how you set the rules for yourself. Maybe reading a lot of self-help books so you remember, like, because I think so many of us get immersed in like, well, I'm living my dream. But then are you though, if you're forgetting your health and going to nature and spending time with family? So it's, you have to you're in a constant flux of rebalance, depending on where you're at, I think.
Absolutely. Amy?
To be honest, I did not think that I would probably have a family because I was living the job. I lived the job for a long time. So the production company that I worked with in Chicago, to be honest with you, there are about a dozen couples who eventually married, some of which had children, some of which didn't, because we ate, slept, all of our hours were there with each other. So it resulted in a lot of relationships. And the same for LA. I think in LA, I was there to do the job. That's what I was there to do. It really wasn't until I came here and that was kind of the gift that Austin gave me. It gave me a diversification of the kinds of projects that I work on. And I felt the room and the space in my life sort of for the first time to take, a partner and children. So this is actually a pretty new chapter for me, to be perfectly honest. This just happened in the last, 3 years. So.
No, that's amazing. Me as head of production, we typically don't know where our next project is coming from. So, our bread and butter is the commercial world. So literally just a few days ago, we, got a request for a proposal. I wrote the proposal. The next day it was approved. So now I'm going to Dallas in a couple weeks. Edging very close to my wife's birthday, by the way, which she was on that she could hear on that conference call when they were saying the dates, and it was just tiptoeing right around that birthday. And believe me, haven't prayed in a while, but it was like, please don't fall on her birthday. I promised I would be there for that. So it's tough. It's a combination of, do I want the work, want to take the opportunity, being able to afford and live the life I need and pay my bills. And at the same time, I've been late to my own birthday dinner once because I had a project that fell on my birthday, and I was about 30 minutes late to my own birthday party because I was wrapping up a job. I am married with no children, but I can tell you that it has its own challenges even without kids. With 2 dogs, I mean, I'm trying to write something on my computer, and as soon as I'm on my computer with an agency on a Zoom call or whatever, I've got my chihuahuas like barking and not having the patience for that. Just like, but I think what's really important are 2 things. If you're in a relationship with somebody and they are what I call a civilian, not in the film industry, and if you are in the industry, because naturally we do not have typical work schedules. And when you are with cohabitating, married, engaged with someone, there is a variance in terms of schedules sometimes, which can be detrimental to a relationship. And really it boils down to, I feel, communication, really communicating with your partner about a project that I want to do or I got offered, and this is probably the schedule it's going to look like. I'm probably going to have to go out of town for a couple days. I can tell you, I have fun. I call them field trips. It's when we go out on location and do film production. It's a lot of fun being out in a different city or state working. But after 2 days, the second night in my hotel room, it's pretty sad. And I miss my dogs, and I miss my wife, and I miss being at home. And we miss each other. So it's a combination of communicating exactly what this work is going to take out of you personally, and taking you away from your children or your partners. And at the same time, supporting each other too. I can tell you, I would have not gone into this industry and risk going into a freelance world after just getting married without my wife supporting me and saying that I think you should give it a shot. And I will always credit my wife for that, for really supporting me throughout that. every now and then I have a project where it's a passion project and I'm doing it for free. I'm directing it because I'm just a big fan of this band and I want to do that music video. And I'm expressing myself art-wise. And I tell my wife, I'm not getting money for this, by the way. I'm not getting paid. Having a partner that, you can talk about those things, or, in my situation, my wife, who was very supportive, and be like, I get that, you've got a regular job, but you need some time to express yourself and do something that's going to be fun for you. And I totally get it. And that's totally cool. You should have fun at it. So again, it's the communication, being able to understand and support each other through this life, because it can be challenging with anything you do, not seeing family. It's funny, Amy, I think you said something where some of your family couldn't tell anybody like what you do for a living, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think my parents still know what I do for a living, to be honest with you. It's kind of weird. What do you do again? So again, it's a unique life. And you got to ask yourself, if you love it that much, obviously you're going to do anything you can to make it work. But it can be hard. It can have its challenges, but communication and support, I think, are really great. And if you don't have that support from a partner or a family member, you also have the community and the support with the people that you work with. I can tell you, I've had a few moments working on a film with Jaytyler where I've had a rough day. It's been tough. And, I can just blow out the lines, and Jaytyler could just listen to me vent and just kind of let it out, or, just tell me a joke, or, just hanging out and, with Jen and just, for talk about something else besides work for a second. And, really does go a long way in just kind of resetting kind of the most stressful times in this career field. So yeah, there's that. And so yes, the communication and the support is really, really amazing. Want to talk to something. This is really Amy and Jen. I had some specific questions for you. I wanted to talk about women in film, women in this industry, and exactly some of the obstacles and challenges. Now, Jen, you can go first. What do you feel are the biggest obstacles for women in this industry? What are some of the biggest challenges you faced as being a woman in this industry, and how, if at all, did you overcome any of those examples?
All of the above. God, in my start, I was the only woman that survived through the seasons. If you slept with a guy on the production, you were usually not asked back. I've had my ass slapped while directing somebody on set. I have been looked down to, not listened to, not respected. But the thing is, I coming from Michigan in a very small town, we thought we were the Dukes of Hazzard. I still always knew I was living my dream. And I was better where I was than I would have been. And so I don't know, I somehow got this I don't give a shit attitude about it. It was just like, keep learning more and survive. And then I also have a very sarcastic personality. So I felt like I just merged in with everybody. Like I would crack a joke or whatever. Like I would be like the little sister tagging along, like, can I come to the strip bar too? So,
Yeah.
at the very early stages where a female producer was 1%, I think it was less than 5. I felt like I had to just merge into the, it's gotten a little bit better over the years. I think we're at 11% now. And I've started learning to speak up when I have opinions about things. Like there's some things I've had to, step into some additional roles where I've learned to just keep my mouth shut. But sometimes it was keeping my mouth shut that like led to like continually higher, like keep your mouth shut, just do the job.
Was that based on that you're female, or is it just out of professionalism and you play in the long game and knowing what could happen if you did speak up? I mean, or are you always thinking that way?
Yeah, well, I mean, I did see a lot of females speak up about things that were inappropriate, and they all of a sudden weren't on set anymore a month later. That stuff happened. I remember interviewing for a big show for sci-fi. And for some reason I thought I'm going to wear some jeans and some boots and, like a blazer. And I got hired. And then the executive producer was interviewing other people and said, I never hire a girl in a dress. He's like, I cannot picture her in the field. And I was thinking, oh my God, thank God, like I, dressed the part. So, I just feel like for me, it's been a little bit of a song and dance sometimes. Now, with more years came more confidence. Everything they tell us when we're kids, the more the more power you have, is so correct. I mean, if you just take the time just to do the jobs that nobody wants to do and learn, you can be an asset.
No, that's great. And how should a young female approach this industry going into it, not knowing anybody, not knowing anything, not having the confidence because they don't have that expansive knowledge of someone like you that's been doing it, and not being taken advantage of or made to feel, less than men on set?
I don't know if there is good advice for this, because we've seen what happens on some higher profile things, and it hits the news and then your career's over. I'll just tell you, me personally, I've been hit on a lot by people above me or the talent or this or that. And I always and maybe this was just also my growing up in a small town. I was very insecure growing up. So I was always very complimented when somebody hit on me. So my instant reaction to them was like, oh my God, you're so sweet. Thank you. I can't do that. I have a boyfriend but I would just acknowledge and compliment and then thank you, and then walk away. And that somehow worked for me. That was the end of it.
No, that's wild. Happens to me all the time.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So for the beginning of my career, like you, we got into this in our I'm presuming early 20s. Yes. So at that point, in the office setting, I worked with a lot of women. But when you went into the field and you were actually shooting, I was very often, probably like you, the only woman. And I remember, and it is kind of an anecdote that I think sums up my point pretty succinctly, is there was this on-set photographer that I would hire for a bunch of my projects. His work is beautiful. And we both lived actually in the same neighborhood in LA, and we knew each other well, and I trusted him, and we became really good friends. And I remember one night after dinner, after shooting, we wrapped shooting and we were eating dinner, and dinner was dissolving into drinks. And I was about to make my exit. And he looked at me and he's like, I've worked with you a lot and you know exactly when to stand up and leave. He's like, and it wasn't something that I was cognizant. Maybe I was cognizant of it. It came with experience, but he was right. When the night starts to dissolve from, okay, wrap time, we've eaten food, my belly is full, maybe I've had a drink or two and a few laughs, and I've hung out, and now it's time for me to leave because at that point there's nothing left. There's just nothing left for me. And it kind of sucks. It does, that you have to sort of manage that. And that I have to make that choice to remove myself. But that came with a bevy of experiences that were uncomfortable, where, even people, I had an FBI agent in the chair who I was interviewing for a documentary, who, when the camera, when they've got to change cards, he would make advances. And it got so bad that actually the DP that I was working with was like, enough. Like, she has told you where her position is. You have to stop. Like, it can be ridiculous. It can be ridiculous. So, and I'm not going to lie to you, and this is part of the thick skin that I mentioned before. I worked with a director who, behind closed doors and in a very hush-hush way, was like, hey, hire me an assistant, and it has to be a young, good-looking girl. I've had 2 directors do that, who was like, hey, producer, I only want assistants who are female, and if they're young and pretty, great. And that is a hard thing. And in one of those directors' cases, I had a couple of the women in that particular production come to me and say, hey, can I take you to lunch? And that conversation was, I'm really uncomfortable in the office after you leave. And so I was like, okay, that's it. I will not leave until you leave. Every day of the week for the entire production, I will stay until all the women leave, and I will be the last one, just to make sure. And that also sucks. But what am I going to do, right? I'm not going to leave any of these women in a position that they don't feel safe in. And did I talk to the director? You bet I did. Did it change his position? No, it did not. So you got to look out for each other too. That's the most that I could do for those women was I could look out for them. I could be present. I could draw the line in the sand. And whether or not some of the, productions are their own independent entities.
It's almost the visualization of, I wouldn't walk down a dark alley in a dangerous neighborhood at night. So you have to just sort of figure out when you're on a production, what your dark alley to avoid is.
Or who your dark alley is.
I can, as a man, it's funny you say dark alley, because as 6'3", 290, dark alleys, I don't see them the same way as you do, and sometimes that behavior on set actually, which is something that a female would pick up on faster than a guy normally would. And that is not supporting that guy for that behavior. But again, it's the lack of awareness sometimes that some people have. Some people have blinders. Not saying I have blinders, but I'm saying, again, it's like you seeing things differently than maybe, other men would see differently, but it is to understand why that is a threat, why a parking lot looks different to someone at night as opposed to me at night, which I have no problem with. But I didn't know that women sometimes have their keys out ready to go, in a position to stab. I didn't know that, honestly, and again, it's just being hyper aware of the environment, and maybe even looking to see, if the behavior maybe changes, or just kind of the energy in the room changes, right?
Yeah, well, and I think a good example to have too is I have a fairly new friend, I guess 5 years ago, who's in a wheelchair, and I never noticed how inconvenient the whole world is when you have a friend that's in a wheelchair. And I'm not even the one in the wheelchair, but I'm like, oh, wow, there's no ramp on this sidewalk. What is she going to do? She literally could not come to my condo in LA because there was no elevator up to my place. All of a sudden I was very hyper aware of all these things. So I think it's good, to talk about it and be aware, because you're not aware till you are, right?
No, absolutely. The education and the awareness, it really does bring new light to it. Ladies, when y'all started in this industry at a certain time, at a certain age, and to seeing how where you're at in this industry now, has anything changed? Has anything gotten better? How much further do we have to go in order for this to feel more of a level playing field?
I think it's difficult a little bit to gauge. I definitely feel that there's more women. I definitely palpably feel that there's more women in the industry, period.
Our show is majority women, right?
Our show was majority women.
But
Yeah.
the director was male. Directors.
But also I think Jen and I have reached a certain kind of level of I don't know, we've sort of risen through the ranks, right? So I don't really totally know what it is to be brand new. I know that there's more women, so that's helpful. I do think that there are probably more men who are aware. It's clearly a conversation piece coming out of the major hub of LA, with the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein, there's that whole conversation piece. So men are more aware, I believe. I hope everybody's advocating for each other.
Yeah, and I'm seeing the female DPs in town are always booked. I can never get them.
Yeah.
They're always working, and I'm starting to see a lot more female directors on set. And yeah, definitely a lot more female producers and female gaffers and grips and ACs and
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. You can actually hire an entire crew. You can have an entire production of just women if you want one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I mean, like I had to staff up just like a PSA a couple months ago, and it had to be all females, and it was not that hard. It was the gaffer I had to find in Houston, but yeah, I mean, there's people now.
No, absolutely. It used to be a lot harder to hire females in those grip and electric, and it's not like that anymore. Or definitely not as common.
Well, and before we leave the whole women, there are a lot of organizations for women in film and in television. Find them, join them. They're great networking opportunities, and a lot of them have mentoring programs.
And I run Austin Entertainment Business in town, and it does Zoom and live events, and it's very mentoring to everybody. But there's a lot of females that will volunteer for me, and then they'll ask me advice, or I'll help get them jobs. I end up going through so many volunteers because they're all working. So I mean, there's a place right there for you.
No, that's amazing. Was there any, Jaytyler, was there any particular moment in your career that you felt discouraged, or maybe you weren't hitting kind of the traction you were expecting, if at all? And how did you overcome that? Did you ever have any doubts that this career would be right for you?
Yeah. Moving here was actually very difficult. So I had my my first couple of years working in Manhattan, and it's a job in Manhattan, and you go to work at your job, and then you leave your job and you go and you have a life. Coming here a couple years ago, at least, and I feel like the community has grown more, or at least I'm more involved in it now. But when I moved here, I was not invited. So there was a group of people that were already on Friday Night Lights, and what was the other show that was here? Pretty Little Things, Pretty Little Liars. Pretty Little Liars. So those were two shows that were like 2010 to or 2008 to 2012 kind of thing. And that group of people had their clique, and they had their niche, and they were, if they weren't working, they were getting beers every Wednesday night, and they were at Barton Springs on Saturday mornings, and that was just a small group of people. And when I got here, they thought that I took somebody's job, and I have never been bullied like that, and I was genuinely bullied. And people would I was getting sabotaged at work, even just like really small things. Somebody would come and inventory the walkies, and after I already inventoried them, and there would be different handwriting down, and then different walkies would go to different people on different channels, and then it would all come back to me. And it was a secret, like, let's get him out of here because this guy is our buddy and he's supposed to be in that role. But who's this guy coming with this TV show thinking that he's a hot shit? So that was hard. And they would make sure that I was the first call. So now, although I came in with the television show and I had already shot 22 episodes of it, and this was not my first show, I've been in the business for 5 or 6 years by the time I got here. I was already qualified for the DGA at that point, and now I'm starting as a PA in a new town here where nobody knows who I am. So then I was doing first person in the morning, making sure that the studios were open. And then at the very end, you have to dump all the footage. So then I would be waiting with the person with DIT, downloading all the footage at the end of the day. So my days, I mean, I really genuinely had 17, 18-hour days almost every day. And it was really trying, but I got over that hump. And when that show was over, it's the camaraderie that the community can build, because then you're just like, I don't know about that guy, but he didn't quit. So, I mean, we tried hard.
We really tried.
Yeah, we really tried hard to get that guy out of here, and he didn't leave. So I guess he's all right. And then, you get invited to some of those little kind of clicky things. But breaking into Austin was very tough, because that group of friends, when they had a 12-hour day, for example, they would all go and do things together. And meanwhile, I'm sitting and waiting for the footage to be downloaded. But where it was different in Austin than in New York. New York, the day is over, you go, you do your thing. Here, the day is over. What do we want to do now? So it's an interesting community for sure. But
Wait, y'all hang out after a rap? What?
yeah, right.
Don't
that
tell
call?
him.
Don't tell.
Sorry.
That's funny.
Jen?
I don't get invited either as the
Oh, okay.
producer.
Everyone was like, yo, yeah, dude, last night the brews. And I was like, what y'all do last night?
You'll find if you ever do the producer route or head of production or whatever, crew and us, we don't get invited.
No, that's all right. It's all right. Jen, you want to, you remember any kind of super discouraging moment in your career to where you know, I don't think this is for me. I'm going to do something else, and what changed your mind?
Okay. Wow.
Even if it's
my
not
brain
one-
just went there, didn't it? Yes, I do. I was working for a show that starts with Doctor at a big studio in LA,
Copy.
and it had a bad reputation. And I was working 23-hour days, and I was like, how did I end up here? And the thing about it was very heavy with women that worked there, and they were all dragons. I've never seen such cruelty. And I was pulled aside in dark hallways when I went there by safe men that were like, don't ever piss that person off. She's literally hopped over somebody while they were having a heart attack and said, get up, we have a deadline. And it was one of those sort of environments. Like I still kind of like look back at it. I'm like, and it literally is what prompted me to move to Austin. I'm like, I'm done. Maybe I'll do production for, a corporate company like Whole Foods or something. And when I came out here, that was not the case, but it was a little hard to get in. I was definitely like the asshole from LA that was, trying to knock on doors, and they were like, go back to where you came from. Property values are too high and we already all have our jobs. It took a good year, but then I realized how fantastic Austin is, because you can do a feature film, a TV series, and a commercial all in the same month, and you can wear different hats in each one of them.
Absolutely. And at the end of the night, head to pillow, you're in your own home, and that's kind of nice, right? I think it's nice. Amy, what about you?
I had the same reception when I first came. I was networking. It was actually before I even made the move. For about a year before I made the move to Austin, I sort of came on a kind of an exploratory trip, and I reached out to a few people, blah, blah, blah. And I remember one of them was willing to talk to me on the phone, and that conversation consisted of, we're done. We have everything we need here. We don't need any more. Like, don't come. She legitimately was like, we don't come. We're full. And I was like, oh, and it wasn't a pleasant conversation at all. And I remember hanging up and being like a little bit stunned, right? It's just a little bit like, well, why did she even take the call? Like, why would she even bother? But right? Right? I'm not gonna let that stop me. And also it's just, I just didn't see myself ultimately long-term in LA. It just wasn't my long-term place. So
We have a few more minutes till we wrap this up. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, panelists, too, giving us the gold today. Is there anybody in the audience that has any questions for anybody on the panel that you would like to ask? And let's answer them. Go ahead.
Jen, I hear you're on the board of the Texas Media Coalition. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes,
Thank
Chris.
you. Thank you, sir. Nice stranger, sir.
If you're familiar with Austin entertainment business, Chris is a big producer who worked with James Cameron for a very long time, and he is heading up Texas Media Coalition, which is writing a new tax bill to help draw in $15 million and above productions to the state of Texas to keep everybody working in our backyard.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And you're on the board.
Yes, and I'm on the board, and I'm working to help and introduce and bring in the people that can collaborate. So I think I've introduced Chris to almost all of Austin at this point, and we're all trying to work together like a big happy community, to make something that makes sense for the entertainment business and the businesses here also. Instead of telling them what they want, we're saying, well, what do you want? How can we work together?
Absolutely. No, that's great. Actually, I want to bring up, that brings up a good point with Jaytyler's hazing story, and really just talking about more work coming to the state, to Austin. You know, we are a production company here in Austin, and we have many other production companies in this town that are bigger than us, sometimes have cooler stuff than us, some that aren't, you know, and some that are really small and just starting off. But I can tell you, you know, you're going to have haters in this industry. You're going to have haters when you're new to a town or when you're new to a project. You know, my advice would just, you know, just be killing with kindness. I know it's not as satisfying as maybe telling them off, but you might end up digging yourself in a hole, you know, in front of a lot of people that might be embarrassing, or people will never forget that. But at the same time, I do want to mention that with the competition that we have in this town as a production company, we don't really call them competition. Honestly, most of them are our friends. The Bear is a really big production company here in town. They're great. We know Ben and all those guys at the Bear. And honestly, we bid on the same jobs all the time. And sometimes we get them and sometimes they get them. Whoever gets them, hey, it wasn't our turn. We're not the guy, but you know what? The next one we'll get. And hey, I saw your spot, dude. Looks great. Killer, dude. You know, like, there is this community of, again, you are going to get some haters, but at the same time, you know, we should all be rooting for each other, rooting for each other's success. Because if Jaytyler's busy, well, guess what? That means, you know, if Amy and Jen are busy, well, guess what? I mean, that means more opportunities for us to get those new projects and to hire more people, because they are all booked. You know, it's an ecosystem in this town, in this state. You know, I can't really speak for the other cities like New York or LA, because all I know is really just Austin. But again, it's that emphasis on, you know, you might get those again, haters, but at the same time, just kind of a little bit of a coaching item. It's like, just all root for each other. You know, this town's too small. I think there's plenty for everybody. And, you know, if I didn't get it and the next guy got it, you know, hey, we'll get the next one. Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's like we're all athletes. So one person's going to win the race, another person, but at the end of the day, everybody can go have beers. And it all goes back into, we're in this for fun. This is our community. So if we're at battle with each other, then what sort of community is that?
Absolutely. I just wanted to bring, you know, that up, because, you know, that does happen sometimes. Do we have any other questions? Yes.
Yes, I am the official voice of Zoom today. So I don't want to reassure there are 18 people on the Zoom who are able to watch and participate. I'd like to share some of the stuff that came up.
Beautiful.
Xavier was very excited to have a fellow San Angelo person.
What? Wow. My hometown, San Angelo. Wow. Good for you, Xavier.
Nathaniel really resonated with the piece about how to balance personal life with work life. Dawn shared that it was interesting to hear all of your reasons for moving to Austin. I have two questions as well. We can start with Max's question. So Max asked, would you guys suggest going to film school for a leg up, and what school as well for that advantage?
Yes and no. If you've got money to just toss around, then I say yeah, because you're going to make a lot of contacts. And the whole point of it is to make contacts. It's like the reason you go to an Ivy League school, you know, you meet the future CEOs.
And you walk away with a body of work.
Yeah.
You've already got a body of work behind you that you be creating full time, and that's valuable. You can market yourself using that work. So on that, I did not go to film school, so it worked out okay for me. But
too.
if you do, if you want to, and like Jensen, you've got the money to, you would walk away with a great network potentially, and a body of work.
I would like to not suggest a specific one, though. I would say look at the ones that your favorite directors or producers or whoever have come from, you know, and their bodies of work and, you know, their culture, because they're all so different. So it's like you need to kind of, it's like choosing a college. You need to make that decision for yourself.
think
Well,
that's
and on that line, if you know that you're going into film school, you have to, I would almost recommend if you can get some PA work before you go to film school. That way you can see what you actually want to focus on. Because, you're saying I went to Penn State, you didn't just like go to Penn State. I went to Penn State for communications. So when you say film school, if you're going to film school because you want to be a grip and carry sandbags around, and that's really what you want to do, I don't know if you need the film school for that. You need the practical time on set.
Yes.
But if you want to figure out why you need budget making and why you need editing skills, that's a good reason to go to a film school. But once you get into it, there's definitely specific lanes that you have to choose. It's not just a general broad stroke of education.
Absolutely. And again, on the PA thing too, is if you work in hair and makeup on a set, all you know is hair and makeup. You don't know art's job. You don't know the AD's job. When you are a PA on set, you see everybody's job and what they do. That's how I decided. I originally thought I wanted to be in camera. I'm like, man, cameras are cool, man. And I get to like play with them and lenses. And I saw the cases that they have to lug around, all the crap and the carts. No way, dude. Not for me, man. Not doing it. I don't want to do that. And then I thought I wanted to be in art. I'm like, yeah, man, you get to like dress a set and make it look all cool. And then I saw all the shopping and returns they have to do and organizing all the inventory of props, and absolutely not. No. But then I saw what a producer does and I was like, I want to do that. And the only way to be able to do that is to see everyone's job at that level. It really is an important place to start. I'm sure we, kind of all started there. But again, I want to emphasize that really is kind of a foundation that you lay for experience for later on a set. So yeah.
So Max, for the answer for that, just one other thing to chime in is if you want to be a writer, go to writing school. And if you want to be a producer, maybe you go to film school and notice that is what you're focusing on producing. If you want to be a director of photography, I'd go to photography school. If you want to be an artist, I would go to SVA. I would go to an art school. So that broad stroke of film school for me is a little.
Yeah, and if you want to work in the studios have intern programs, you can go that route. Film festivals have, Sundance has Sundance Lab. So that you got to really sort of kind of like make one of those sheets of what do I love, what do I hate, and start trying to figure that, talk to other people, interview people, like do a blog and give a reason to like call everybody and interview them for your blog just to see like what they say.
Absolutely. We have time for one more question. Anybody? First of all, anybody else in the audience have a question? Go ahead.
I was just wondering if you could repeat the name of the organization for women in film that you said before, or that would help out.
Well, there's Women in Film, and that's a global organization. So if you just look up Women in Film, in a new chapter in Austin,
Yes.
just started the past couple of years.
Yes, it's WIFT, WIFT. That's Women in Film and Television. And they have chapters in San Antonio, Dallas. Austin's a great chapter. If you'd like, we can talk afterwards and I can give you the contact info because we are working with WIFT actively as well. Great organization.
But she did open the door for a shameless plug for AustinEntertainmentBusiness.com, which will turn into AllEntertainmentBusiness.com when you
that too.
type
Actually,
it in.
I heard of WIFT attending Jen's AEP event. So
the idea behind the AEB event is that it comes from a producer's standpoint. And so we really don't candy coat things, and we really try to connect mentors with mentees by having really high profile guest speakers that the mentors want to see also. So it makes for a really collaborative sort of networking event. Like it was to solve the problem of just everybody out of work networking event, and really just have a place where people could find real jobs.
Absolutely wonderful hub. And Jen, they can go to the website and social media to find the meetings and all that.
Yeah, if you just go to the Austin Entertainment Business Instagram, it's got a link tree that has every link ever. So I think you could probably find my whole life story and AUB's life story on the link tree.
And I highly encourage attending because it is a fantastic networking opportunity. And again, I've been doing this 8 years, but even I've met new people and new organizations through AEB as well. It's fantastic. Any other, do we have one more?
Don asked, with the new studio being built in San Marcos, do you think this will expand the Texas film industry?
Yes, I mean, I think that new studios being built are always great. You know, we know that studios in Hollywood, they want things they can rent out for long term. And so that's definitely a positive. I'm curious to find out what they know that we don't know because the tax incentive is.
Right.
Yeah.
But I'm personally very happy that there's a new studio being built in Bastrop as well. So that will draw in productions. There's a lack of production space in the US, and Austin is a ideal place to go. People want to come here to film.
But a really, film is not a, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. So we can have 20 studios here. And if we don't have the infrastructure to figure out the tax incentives and to lobby to, you know, the state tax breaks and whatnot, then we have all the studio space and there's nobody in it.
And also, let's emphasize the talent, right? We all moved here from other markets, and there is this constant sort of struggle when productions come in from New York or LA. There's sort of this bias. I don't know. Oh, you haven't worked in LA or New York, so you know the people in Austin. There's a talent in Austin up to par. The truth is, you are absolutely you are. And so the more that Austin sort of and the players in Austin sort of realize that and market yourself and sort of position yourself and to be perfectly honest with you, once you start getting your rates and once you get to the point where you're negotiating rates with companies on either coast, like don't lowball yourself, because what you're communicating to them is that you may somehow have less skills or are less good at the job. It doesn't make you more marketable.
Yeah,
So-
if an AD, which the going rate for non-union is hovering around 1,000 or so right now, if I was hiring somebody for an AD and they said I am 500, I would
Red
start to
flag.
dig deeper and
Red
go,
flag.
uh-oh.
Have you ever done this before? Right. So be confident in your skills, you know, hone your craft, be good at it.
And if you're not sure, find a mentor or ask questions, and
Yeah.
the support's there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Let's give a round of applause for the panel. Give yourselves a round of applause too. Thank you so much for attending. And I want to thank the panelists, Amy Martinez, Jennifer Hutchins, Jaytyler Ferretti. Thank you again. I'm James Rodriguez with Onion Creek Productions. You all have a great evening.
Thanks, guys.